You know what most mechanics will never tell you? There's a secret transmission fluid change method that could add years to your transmission's life, and only about 1% of car owners actually know about it. I'm talking about a technique that goes way beyond what your dealership recommends, and today I'm pulling back the curtain on this insider secret that could save you thousands of dollars in transmission repairs. Before we dive in, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because I'm constantly sharing money-saving car tips that your mechanic doesn't want you to know about. Let me start by saying this. Everything you think you know about transmission fluid changes is probably wrong. Most people believe that when they go in for a transmission service, they're getting all the old fluid out and all new fluid in. That's not even close to what's happening. The standard transmission fluid change that most shops perform only replaces about 30 to 40% of your actual transmission fluid. Think about that for a second. You're paying good money, and more than half of that old, worn-out fluid is still sitting in your transmission, doing absolutely nothing to protect your gears. Here's why this happens. When a shop does a regular transmission drain and fill, they're only accessing the fluid that's sitting in the transmission pan at the bottom. But here's the thing, your transmission is a complex system with fluid stored in the torque converter, valve body, cooler lines, and radiator. All of that fluid just sits there during a normal service, getting older and more contaminated while you think you've got fresh fluid protecting everything. It's like trying to empty a bottle by only pouring out the top third and calling it clean. So, what's the secret method I'm talking about? It's called a transmission fluid exchange, but not the way most people do it. This is a specialized process that uses a machine to perform multiple cycles of fluid replacement while your engine is actually running. The machine connects directly to your transmission cooler lines and creates a continuous flow system. As old fluid comes out, new fluid goes in at the exact same rate, maintaining perfect pressure throughout the entire process. This method can replace up to 95% of your old transmission fluid compared to that pathetic 30 to 40% from a regular drain and fill. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why doesn't everyone just do this? Well, there are a few reasons, and they're not what you expect. First, most quick lube places and even some dealerships don't have the proper equipment to do this correctly. The machines aren't cheap, and they require someone who actually knows what they're doing to operate them properly. Second, it takes longer and requires more fluid, which means it costs more. A shop can bang out a regular drain and fill in 20 minutes and charge you $150. A proper exchange takes about an hour and uses twice as much fluid, so there's less profit in it for them. But here's where it gets really interesting. There's actually a third reason why shops don't push this service, and it's pretty shady. And some mechanics and service advisors have been told that transmission flushes are bad for your car. You've probably heard this yourself. They'll say that the high pressure can dislodge debris and cause problems, or that it can damage seals and create leaks. Let me be very clear about this. That's mostly nonsense used to scare people away from a service that actually requires skill and proper equipment to perform correctly. The confusion comes from old-school transmission flush machines that used high-pressure systems and were operated incorrectly. Those machines, when used by someone who didn't know what they were doing, could potentially cause issues. But modern transmission exchange equipment works completely differently. It operates at normal transmission line pressure, uses your transmission's own pump to move the fluid, and is completely safe when done properly. The real reason shops spread this myth is because it's easier to do a quick drain and fill than to invest in good equipment and proper training. Let me tell you what actually happens to your transmission fluid over time, because understanding this will make you realize why this secret method is so important. Transmission fluid isn't just a lubricant, it's a hydraulic fluid that operates under extreme pressure and temperature to shift gears, cool components, and protect against wear. Over time, this fluid breaks down at the molecular level. The additives that prevent oxidation, foaming, and corrosion get depleted. The fluid starts to accumulate microscopic metal particles from normal gear wear, clutch material from your friction plates, and other contaminants. As this contaminated fluid continues to circulate, it becomes less effective at doing its job. The viscosity changes, meaning it doesn't flow as smoothly as it should. The friction modifiers that help your transmission shift smoothly start to break down, leading to harsh or delayed shifts. The cooling properties diminish, allowing your transmission to run hotter than it should. And here's the scary part. Once your transmission starts running hotter and shifting harder, the degradation process accelerates exponentially. It's a downward spiral that ends with a transmission rebuild costing you $3,000 to $5,000. Now here's where the secret method becomes absolutely critical. When you only replace 30 to 40% of your fluid with a regular drain and fill, you're mixing fresh fluid with all that contaminated old fluid. Sure, you've improved things slightly, but you haven't really solved the problem. It's like adding a cup of clean water to a gallon of dirty water. The whole mixture is still dirty. But when you use the exchange method to replace 95% of the fluid, you're essentially giving your transmission a complete reset. You're removing almost all of those contaminants, restoring proper viscosity, replenishing all those critical additives, and giving your transmission a fighting chance to last for the long haul. So, how do you actually get this service done? This is where you need to be strategic because not every shop can or will do it correctly. First, you need to find a shop that has a proper transmission exchange machine. Don't just call and ask if they do transmission flushes, because they'll say yes and then do a regular drain and fill. Ask specifically if they have a transmission fluid exchange machine that connects to the cooler lines. Ask them how much fluid the service uses. If they say anything less than 12 to 14 quarts for most vehicles, they're not doing a proper exchange. Second, you want to make sure they're using the correct fluid for your specific transmission. This is absolutely critical and non-negotiable. Every transmission is designed for a specific type of fluid with specific properties. Using the wrong fluid, even if it says universal or works for multiple vehicles, can cause serious problems. Your owner's manual will tell you exactly what specification your transmission requires. For example, if you have a Honda, it needs genuine Honda ATF or an exact equivalent that meets Honda's specifications. If you have a Ford with a newer transmission, it might require Mercon LV. Using Mercon Vive instead, which is an older spec, will cause shifting problems. Third, timing matters more than most people realize. The ideal time to perform this secret transmission service is before you have any problems. I know that sounds obvious, but hear me out. Most people wait until their transmission is already showing symptoms like slipping, hard shifts, or delayed engagement. At that point, changing the fluid might help, but it's not going to fix mechanical damage that's already occurred. The real secret is doing this service preventatively before those symptoms appear. If you have a vehicle with under 75,000 miles and no transmission problems, you're in the perfect window to maximize the benefit. Here's my recommended interval schedule that almost nobody follows but absolutely should. For most vehicles, you should do your first transmission fluid exchange between 30 and 50,000 miles. I know your owner's manual might say the fluid is good for 100,000 miles or even lifetime. Ignore that. Those recommendations are designed to get the car through the warranty period and keep the initial cost of ownership low. They're not designed to make your transmission last 200,000 miles. After that first exchange, do another one every 40 to 50,000 miles. Yes, this is more frequent than most people do, but this is also why most people end up with transmission problems. Now let me address the elephant in the room. How much is this going to cost you? A proper transmission fluid exchange typically runs between $250 and $400 depending on your vehicle and location. I know that's not cheap, but let's put this in perspective. A transmission rebuild or replacement costs anywhere from $3,000 to $7,000 depending on your vehicle. If you do 3 transmission exchanges over the life of your vehicle at $300 each, that's $900 in preventative maintenance. That $900 investment could be the difference between a transmission that lasts 200,000 miles and one that fails at 120,000 miles requiring a $4,000 repair. Let me share something that most people don't know about modern transmissions. They're more complex and more vulnerable than the transmissions of 20 or 30 years ago. Older transmissions had 4 or maybe 5 speeds and were built like tanks. Modern transmissions have 8, 9, or even 10 speeds. They use more complex valve bodies, more clutch packs, more electronics, and tighter tolerances. This makes them more efficient and better performing, but it also makes them more sensitive to fluid condition. That old myth about transmission fluid being lifetime is especially dangerous with these modern transmissions. The fluid is working harder than ever before and it needs to be maintained properly. Here's another insider tip that goes along with this secret service. When you have the transmission fluid exchange done, also replace your transmission filter if your vehicle has a serviceable one. Not all transmissions have accessible filters, but many do. The filter catches all those microscopic particles I mentioned earlier, and over time it can become restricted. A clogged filter forces your transmission pump to work harder and can reduce fluid flow to critical components. Some shops will try to skip this step because it requires removing the pan and adds labor time. Don't let them skip it. If your transmission has a serviceable filter, it needs to be replaced during the fluid exchange. You also want to inspect the pan for metal shavings or debris while it's off. A small amount of fine material on the magnet in the pan is normal. That magnet is there specifically to catch metal particles from normal wear. But if you see chunks of material, excessive amounts of clutch material that looks like black or brown sand, or large metal particles, that's a red flag that something is wearing abnormally inside your transmission. This doesn't mean you shouldn't do the fluid exchange. In fact, it means you definitely should, and you should plan to do them more frequently moving forward to help slow down whatever wear is occurring. Now, I need to talk about a critical mistake that can ruin everything, even if you do this secret service correctly. Never, and I mean never, add aftermarket transmission additives or stop leak products to your transmission. I see people do this all the time thinking they're helping, and they're actually making things worse. These products can swell seals, change the fluid's friction properties, and cause shifting problems. Your transmission was engineered to work with a specific fluid formula, and adding random chemicals from a bottle at the auto parts store is just asking for trouble. The only thing that should ever go in your transmission is the exact fluid specified by the manufacturer. Let me give you some signs that your transmission fluid desperately needs to be changed, even if you haven't hit your mileage interval yet. First, check the color and smell. Fresh transmission fluid is typically bright red and has almost no smell. As it ages, it darkens to a brownish red and eventually dark brown or black. If your fluid is dark brown or black, you've waited too long, but you still need to change it immediately. If it smells burnt, like burned toast or worse, you have serious problems, and the fluid change should have been done thousands of miles ago. At this point, change the fluid, but understand that some damage may already be done. Second sign to watch for is any change in shift quality. If your transmission is taking longer to engage when you shift from park to drive. If shifts feel harder or softer than they used to. If you notice any slipping where the engine revs but the car doesn't accelerate normally. Or if you see the check engine light come on with transmission-related codes, your fluid is likely degraded. Don't wait to address this. The longer you drive with these symptoms, the more damage is occurring inside the transmission. Every mile you drive with a degraded fluid is causing accelerated wear that could have been prevented. Here's something else most people don't consider. Your driving conditions dramatically affect how often you need this service. If you do a lot of towing, drive in stop-and-go city traffic regularly, live in an extremely hot or cold climate, or do a lot of mountain driving, your transmission works harder and runs hotter. Heat is the #1 enemy of transmission fluid. For every 20 degrees above normal operating temperature, the life of your transmission fluid is cut in half. If you fall into any of these severe duty categories, you should be doing transmission fluid exchanges even more frequently, maybe every 30,000 miles instead of every 50,000. Let me tell you about what happens during a proper transmission exchange so you know what to expect and can make sure the shop is doing it right. The technician will lift your vehicle and locate the transmission cooler lines. These are the lines that carry fluid from the transmission to the cooler, which is usually built into your radiator. The machine gets connected in line with these cooler lines using special adapters. The technician will start your engine and let the transmission pump do its job, circulating fluid through the system. As old fluid is pushed out into the collection tank on the machine, new fluid is simultaneously pulled from the supply tank and fed back into the transmission. The machine monitors the fluid exchange in real time. Most modern machines can actually see the difference between old dark fluid and new bright fluid, and they'll continue the exchange process until only clean fluid is coming out. This typically takes 10 to 15 quarts of new fluid, sometimes more for larger transmissions. The whole process takes 45 minutes to an hour if done correctly. The technician should also be monitoring the system for leaks, checking fluid levels carefully when finished, and taking your car for a test drive to make sure everything shifts properly with the fresh fluid. Now here's a pro tip that almost nobody knows about. After you get this transmission exchange done, drive your car normally for about 50 to 100 miles, then check your transmission fluid level again. Sometimes air can get trapped in the system during the exchange, and as that air works its way out and the new fluid fully circulates through every passage and component, the level can drop slightly. If the level is low, you need to top it off immediately. Running your transmission low on fluid, even by half a quart, can cause serious damage very quickly. Most shops should check this for you. But it's worth verifying yourself or bringing it back for a recheck. Another secret within the secret is that you can actually do a modified version of this at home if you're mechanically inclined and want to save money, though it won't be quite as effective as the professional exchange method. It's called the drain and fill method, done multiple times. Here's how it works. You drain the fluid from the pan, replace the filter, reinstall the pan, and fill it with new fluid. Then you drive the car for a few days to let everything mix and circulate. Then you repeat the entire process again. If you do this 3 or 4 times, you'll eventually replace most of the old fluid. It's more time-consuming and uses more fluid than a single drain and fill, but it's more thorough and cheaper than paying for multiple exchange services. If you go this route, there are some important things to know. First, you need to be extremely careful about getting the fluid level exactly right. Transmissions are very sensitive to being overfilled or underfilled. Get yourself a fluid pump to make filling easier and more precise. Second, dispose of your old transmission fluid properly at a recycling center or auto parts store that accepts it. Don't dump it down the drain or in your yard. Third, keep meticulous records of what you did and when. This documentation can be valuable if you ever have a transmission warranty claim or when you sell the vehicle. Let's talk about what you should absolutely avoid when it comes to transmission service. Never go to a quick lube place for transmission service. I know they're convenient and cheap, but transmission work requires knowledge and proper equipment. I've seen too many horror stories of quick lube places putting in the wrong fluid, overfilling or underfilling the transmission, or claiming they did a service they didn't actually perform. Go to a reputable transmission shop, a dealership that specializes in your brand, or an independent mechanic with specific transmission experience and good reviews. Also avoid any shop that uses a one-size-fits-all approach to transmission fluid. If they tell you their universal fluid works in everything, run away. There's no such thing as a universal transmission fluid that truly works optimally in all transmissions. Each manufacturer has specific requirements for good reasons. Using the proper fluid might cost a bit more, but using the wrong fluid can destroy your transmission. This is not the place to cut corners or go cheap. Spend the extra $20 or $30 for the right fluid. Your transmission will thank you with years of reliable service. Here's something that will blow your mind. Some dealerships and shops will actually try to talk you out of changing your transmission fluid if your car has high mileage and it's never been done before. They'll say that fresh fluid can cause problems in a transmission that's used to running on old fluid. There is a tiny grain of truth to this, but it's wildly misunderstood and misapplied. The real issue is that if a transmission has been neglected for 150,000 miles with no fluid changes, the clutches inside have worn down significantly. The old degraded fluid has actually been providing extra friction to compensate for these worn clutches. Like when you suddenly introduce fresh, slippery fluid, those worn clutches might start slipping. But here's what they don't tell you. If you don't change that fluid, the transmission is going to fail anyway, probably sooner rather than later. At least if you change the fluid, you have a chance of extending its life. The worst-case scenario is the same whether you change it or not, the transmission fails. But there's a decent chance that fresh fluid will help, even in a high-mileage neglected transmission. My recommendation is this. If you have a high-mileage vehicle that's never had the fluid changed, do a simple drain and fill first, not a full exchange. Drive it for a few thousand miles. If everything is okay, then do a full exchange. This gradual approach is safer for transmissions that have been neglected. Let me share with you the absolute best case scenario and what this secret method can do for your vehicle when done right. I know people who have Honda Accords and Toyota Camrys with over 300,000 miles on the original transmission. These aren't special transmissions or lucky flukes. They're the direct result of regular, proper transmission fluid maintenance using the exchange method we've been talking about. Every 40 to 50,000 miles like clockwork, they get a full exchange with the proper Honda or Toyota fluid. The transmissions shift like new, run cool, and just keep going mile after mile, year after year. Compare that to the typical scenario where someone follows the manufacturer's recommendation of no service until 100,000 miles. Or worse, the lifetime fluid myth. These transmissions usually start showing problems between 120 and 160,000 miles. They develop harsh shifts, slipping, overheating issues, and eventually fail completely. The owner is shocked because they followed the manual, but they didn't understand that those maintenance schedules are designed around warranty periods and initial cost of ownership, not maximum longevity. Here's your action plan right now. First, check your transmission fluid condition if your vehicle allows you to access the dipstick. Many newer cars have sealed transmissions without dipsticks, which is incredibly stupid in my opinion, but that's a rant for another day. If you can check it, look at the color and smell. Dark brown or burnt smell means you need service immediately. Second, look up your vehicle's transmission fluid specification in your owner's manual or online. Know exactly what fluid your transmission requires. Third, find a reputable shop with proper exchange equipment. Call around, ask questions, and don't be afraid to be picky about who touches your transmission. Fourth, schedule the service and make sure they use the correct fluid. Replace the filter if applicable, inspect the pan, and check for any other issues while they're in there. Fifth, keep your receipt and record the mileage. Set a reminder in your phone or calendar to do this service again in 40 to 50,000 miles. Make this a regular part of your maintenance routine, just like oil changes. Your transmission is the second most expensive component in your vehicle after the engine. It deserves proper attention and maintenance. One more thing I want to address because I know some of you are thinking it. What about CVT transmissions? These continuously variable transmissions are becoming more and more common, and they're even more sensitive to fluid condition than traditional automatics. Everything I've said about the secret exchange method applies even more to CVTs. In fact, CVTs are notorious for failing when the fluid isn't changed regularly. If you have a Nissan, Subaru, or any other vehicle with a CVT, do not skip transmission maintenance. These transmissions absolutely require regular fluid changes, typically every 30 to 40,000 miles, despite what the manual might say. CVT fluid is highly specialized, and you absolutely must use the exact fluid specified for your vehicle. Using the wrong CVT fluid, even if it's another brand's CVT fluid, can cause shuddering, slipping, and failure. Nissan CVT fluid is different from Subaru CVT fluid, which is different from Honda CVT fluid. They're not interchangeable. If a shop tells you their universal CVT fluid works in everything, that's your sign to leave immediately. The few dollars you might save on cheaper fluid will cost you thousands when your CVT fails prematurely. Let's wrap this up with the big picture. This secret transmission fluid exchange method isn't really secret in the sense that it's hidden knowledge. It's secret because only about 1% of car owners actually know about it and do it. Most people are either following outdated manufacturer recommendations, listening to shops that want to do the quick and easy service, or falling for myths about transmission flushes being dangerous. Now you're in that 1% who knows the truth. You understand why this matters, how it works, and what you need to do to protect one of the most expensive components in your vehicle. The transmission in your car is an incredibly complex piece of engineering. It's taken decades of development and millions of dollars of research to create transmissions that are efficient, smooth, and powerful. But all that engineering means nothing if the fluid that makes it all work is degraded and full of contaminants. You can have the best transmission in the world, and it will still fail if you don't maintain the fluid properly. On the flip side, even an average transmission can last hundreds of thousands of miles with proper fluid maintenance. Now, this is one of those situations where a little bit of knowledge and a small investment of money can save you massive amounts of trouble and expense down the road. We're talking about spending maybe $300 every few years to potentially avoid a $4,000 or $5,000 transmission replacement. That's one of the best returns on investment you can get in car maintenance. Plus, you get the peace of mind of knowing your transmission is properly maintained and the improved driving experience of smooth, crisp shifts that come with fresh fluid. If you found this information valuable, do me a favor and share it with your friends and family. Most people have no idea about this, and you could literally save someone thousands of dollars by passing this along. Drop a comment below and let me know what kind of vehicle you drive and when. The last time you had your transmission fluid changed was. I read every comment, and I love hearing from you guys. And if you haven't subscribed yet, make sure you do that now because I'm constantly putting out content that can save you money and help you take better care of your vehicle. Until next time, take care of your car, and it will take care of you.